Identical twins don't necessarily look similar. The way they're raised plays a huge role in the way they grow and end up looking because of developmental plasticity. If a female pig gives birth after being fed a diet with way too little vitamin A, her piglets may not have eyeballs. Eskimos who switched from their traditional diet to industrial food famously changed to having narrow, weak jaws in a single generation. They also went from being able to give birth quickly and easily to having dangerous, long labors. The reason you have kneecaps is that before you were born, you bent and straightened your legs. Any fetus who doesn't will not develop kneecaps. There was a goat born with no front legs. Since it had to learn to balance and get around on its hind legs, in many ways its bones, muscles, and tendons developed more like a kangaroo's than a normal goat's. The opposite can happen with humans. Running and leaping on 4 legs is a useful skill for a wrestler. Ismail Musukaev is a world champion in freestyle wrestling. If you want your son to be a good wrestler, training him to run and leap on 4 legs should begin at an early age, probably before age 2. If you want your daughter to jump, gallop, and trot like a horse, that's possible too. But only if you don't mechanically poison your baby in a way that takes away his ability to bend normally at the hips. Hyenas raised in captivity on a soft diet have abnormal skulls that resemble those of cubs, with no cranial crest. Similarly, children raised on soft food become deformed. Their faces are unable to grow on the front of their heads, which reduces the size of the airway, and often turns them into snorers, or even gives them sleep apnea. If the sleep apnea is bad enough, it makes them physically and mentally ill for life, and reduces their memory and cognitive ability. The difference is staggering. In this study, children very low in intelligence made up 0% of the non-snorers, 12% of the snorers, and 56% of the kids with obstructive sleep apnea. Artwork depicting the village idiot has exactly the physiognomy you'd expect. Because of developmental plasticity, morphological variants of certain species are produced that are so different looking and consistent that even experts have misinterpreted them as different subspecies. Since the 1900s, anthropologists have known that humans are one of these species. It was discovered that any human population can drastically change its appearance in a single generation just by changing the way it feeds and raises its children. So why are most identical twins almost identical, including these 2 pairs who were mistakenly separated at birth and raised by different families, one rural and the other urban? In our civilization, different demographics feed their children differently, but it's all mushy food. It's never a workout for the jaw muscles. In all cases, we use baby bottles, spoons, and forks. In all cases, it's common to stop breastfeeding abnormally early. The children of the rich and the poor, the good and the bad, the Christian and the progressive, the athletic and the sedentary, the Amish and the high-tech are all almost the same morphological variant. If you're born into an irresponsible, self-destructing civilization, and you never see anything outside of it, you'll probably never realize that the way you live is not normal, unless you live in the age of rapid decline. It's unsurprising that mewing has become a global phenomenon. Resting tongue posture plays a huge role in how the jaws and face develop. Pediatricians and orthodontists don't know this, in part because it's not the easiest thing to identify. A missing eyeball, on the other hand, is obvious to everyone. On rare occasion, a baby has an accident and loses an eyeball. When this happens, he'll have an asymmetrical skull when he grows up. This is because on the side with the eyeball will slowly grow over the years and apply pressure to the surrounding tissues, whereas on the other side, there is no growing eye to apply pressure. As a kid, you never felt like your eyes were growing and applying so much pressure to the bones behind them that it caused those bones to grow bigger? But that's exactly what happened. Similarly, if a baby's tongue posture is normal during sleep, meaning it's suctioned to the roof of the mouth and in contact with the sides of the palate, then as the tongue grows, the palate will expand to perfectly fit the tongue, and the upper and lower jaws will grow up and forward. Since almost every baby and kid today develops one type of pathological tongue posture or another, normal growth of the jaws and face is almost unheard of. Henry Cavill is simultaneously one of the best-looking actors in Hollywood and a physical degenerate. His tongue is normal, but his palate and dental arches are abnormally narrow. This could have never happened if Henry had grown up with normal tongue posture. 2 centuries ago, all American Indian tribes found the derangement of the civilized race's teeth a striking peculiarity. Now, their descendants are even worse. According to the women on OkCupid, the average man is a 3 out of 10 in looks, and there are more than 1,000% more men below average than above. Modern people do not have normal human faces, heads, or airways. Since these deformities increase the risk of all sorts of bad and evil things, women have evolved to discriminate against deformed men. Even the orthodontic standards for what a normal head is are wrong. They're supposed to be based on the teeth, jaws, and heads of normal people, but they're not. Before attempting to find out the shape of a normal head, scientists in the 1900s should have first learned the basics of orthodontics and anthropology, so they could have avoided this sophomoric and deadly mistake. Some conventional orthodontists will disagree with me, but bear in mind that orthodontists tend to have very abnormal aesthetic preferences. Their results are so bad that anyone with some kind of an idea what a human face is supposed to look like doesn't want to be a conventional orthodontist. But just like there exist people attracted only to morbidly obese women, there are people who prefer deformed, downswung faces, and they are naturally drawn to conventional orthodontics. Perhaps the most influential orthodontist of all time, Charles Tweed, did this to one of his patients, and published it in his textbook with this commentary. The results of treatment have been most gratifying, except for the fact that this child has become quite unhappy and concerned about the growth of her nose. It's not just orthodontists. Almost no one today knows what a normal human face looks like. Joe Rogan has sleep apnea because his face, jaws, and airway are severely deformed. Yet he's unaware of this fact that's obvious to everyone with a decent medical, orthodontic, or anthropological education. This despite being interested in the topic and talking to many medical experts. His tongue is normal-sized, but his palate is way too narrow to fit his tongue. This is like if Joe had one leg a foot shorter than the other, and everyone around him thought that that was perfectly normal. Well, I'm here to say that the emperor has no clothes. The same bone that makes up the roof of your mouth is also the floor of your nasal airway. So it's not surprising that someone with Joe's deformity can't breathe normally during sleep. Even the prettiest girl in the world in 1981, Brooke Shields, can't sleep normally because of her facial deformity. She suffered from teeth grinding during sleep for most of her life. Do you, dear viewer, know even one person with normal teeth? 32 non-crooked teeth with a normal bite that form an appropriately wide arch for the tongue? Probably everyone you know has normal hands. A minority has normal feet, and no one has normal teeth. It didn't used to be this way, and we can fix it in a single generation. Experts have to start calling out the blatant incompetence of the medical authorities. Right now, this is perhaps the most influential orthodontic textbook by Dr. Profit. No joke. He states that a patient with a posterior crossbite can have adequate palatal width. In his drawing, he doesn't include a tongue, but the only way for the bottom teeth to become so widely separated is for the tongue to be at least that wide, about 20% wider than the palate. The palate isn't of adequate width. It's 20% too narrow, based on the size of the tongue. This belief among orthodontists that they can just look at a palate and decide if it's narrow or not without comparing it to the size of the tongue is common due to the miseducation in dental schools. Most orthodontists never measure the tongue, let alone use a type of treatment that results in the palate matching the tongue, an obvious requirement for a normal face, airway, and jaws. This is as crazy as if a person with one short leg got leg lengthening surgery on it, and the surgeon never bothered to measure the normal leg. So after the procedure, the legs still don't match. So what can you do? With babies, one of the most important things is to check their tongue posture during sleep. It's easy for parents to learn the technique to do so without waking up their baby, and to tell if their baby's tongue is suctioned to the roof of their mouth or out of place. If you discover the sleeping tongue posture is pathological, there's another technique that's also easy to learn to fix your baby's sleeping tongue posture without waking him up. This is a mewing secret so great that even John Mew doesn't know it. If your child waits too long to develop the habit of normal tongue posture, it'll be too late. In this extreme case on the right, the tongue has grown for many years with chronic pathological posture. The tongue has a normal adult width, but its natural home, the palate, has barely more than the width of the palate of a baby. Every day, your child's tongue grows a little bigger, and if their tongue is always out of place, every day the discrepancy between their normal-sized tongue and abnormally narrow palate grows larger. After the tongue-palate discrepancy grows too large, neither the greatest mewing secret nor my tongue and jaw exercises for older children will be able to fix the problem. Contact me now, before it's too late. For some babies, too late is before their first birthday. This last image comes from a textbook for forensic or crime scene investigators. When investigating a potential murder of a baby by his own mother, they're taught to evaluate the dead child's facial development. If the child has, and I quote, a narrow face combined with a small triangular chin, a small backward position lower jaw, and especially a high-arched palate, then the baby probably died due to a sleep-breathing disorder depriving his brain of oxygen. Reference number 7 teaches that the presence of a high and narrow hard palate is a clinical sign indicative of a narrow nasomaxillary complex and has been associated with the presence of sleep-disordered breathing and abnormal nasal resistance. There's a continuous interaction between abnormal enlargement of the soft tissue of the upper airway, development of oral breathing, and abnormal growth of the nasomaxillary complex and mandible. These are things that pediatricians have to understand. Isn't it a hoot that it's just the crime scene investigators who learn these vital things about orthodontics and pediatrics? You gotta love how the orthodontic authorities flaunt their ignorance. They admit they don't know what causes crooked teeth and bad bites. In the same orthodontic textbook, they teach not only that the pressure from the growth of the eye is responsible for the growth of the bone behind it, but even that the pressure from a growing brain determines the size the cranium grows to. This book is ostensibly about orthodontics, yet they don't have a thing to say about what normal tongue posture is, even though the pressure applied to the palate, teeth, and jaw bones is drastically different during normal resting tongue posture and any of the pathological postures. The word pathological is used to describe chronic, abnormal tongue posture because it causes insufficient pressure on the palatal suture, which may result in a palate and upper airway so narrow that normal sleep and life are not possible. Just look at these photos, dear viewer. Nothing similar to any of them is included in the orthodontic textbook. Can any reasonable person believe that it's purely coincidence that this dental arch is 40% wider on the same side on which this lopsided tongue is huge? That it's also coincidence that the person born without a tongue has the narrowest dental arch possible? The person with a tiny tongue has a tiny dental arch to match? And the person with a gigantic tongue has far wider dental arches than a typical modern person? Assuming you were born normal and weren't malnourished or poisoned, if your resting tongue posture had been normal growing up, pressure would have been applied to the roof and the sides of your palate, and your growth would have been normal. But that didn't happen, did it? There are several types of pathological tongue posture. If the tongue always rests down and forward, this is a typical result. If the tongue always rests down and back during childhood, well, you're looking at the result of that. There's so much to be done and to discover. If your baby sleeps with bad tongue posture and I teach you the greatest mewing secret, please upload videos showing the results as your baby grows up. This will allow the whole world to find out if a baby's pathological tongue posture is corrected day after day after day, how long it typically takes to develop the habit of normal tongue posture, and how healthy and beautiful such a baby typically grows up to be. With modern technology, it's so easy to conduct some of the most important medical experiments that have never been done. If people donate money to me, I'll be able to financially incentivize the parents I teach to take part in the most important medical research in the world. It's so cheap and easy, even with zero help from the universities and medical authorities. For parents with older children, there are a number of special foods and exercises that some kids enjoy just as much as their favorite sports and foods. The goal is the same: to develop normal tongue posture during sleep without surgery or appliances, if that's still possible, so they can end up healthy and beautiful. The most important growth takes place before birth. The closer your baby is to being anatomically normal at birth, the more likely it is that he has the capability of growing up normal. And the healthier both of the parents are, the more likely their baby is to be born normal. Unfortunately, it's rare for the father to be healthy before conception, or for the mother to be healthy before or during pregnancy. Kevin Boyd believes that modern fetuses have poor jaw development compared to those from a few centuries ago. Just 90 years ago, a number of cultures still possessed the ancient wisdom of encouraging those engaged to be married to eat more of their most nutrient-dense foods, so they'd be more likely to produce good, healthy children. Nowadays, like so much of our ancient wisdom, it's all but gone. I'm probably the only person left in the Western world who's still teaching that if you want good orthodontic results for your kids, you should make healthy changes before conceiving them. If you're planning to have a baby in a year or two, contact me. I expect the parents who start eating well, exercising, and doing other things to get healthy a year before conception will be much more likely to have children who never have pathological tongue posture, develop any chronic diseases, or become ugly. I could have included a clip in this video to teach everyone the greatest mewing secret, but I didn't. We have civilizational problems even bigger than the medical authorities convincing everyone to mechanically poison their babies. Every time a civilization has become technologically advanced, the ruling class has always become so irresponsible that it resulted in self-destruction. This is so well known that even Hollywood teaches it to teenagers. Talking about Hollywood, they have a tried and true method for making an impact. For a movie like The Avengers, they take over a year to tease it, release trailers, interviews, even whole other movies, and build up to a premiere that millions are excited to see. I should copy that. I'm going to take on apprentices, teach the mewing secret to some parents, do interviews, announce a release date, release extraordinary videos, and then, on the day of the premiere, publish a documentary and a lot more to educate and astound the world. That way everyone will be able to learn the greatest mewing secret for free. And I'll have done what I can to try to save our civilization and peoples. This whole process will of course be repeated for the reveal of other potentially world-changing medical information. If the important medical information is uncovered and widely shared, many families will pretty much never have to see a doctor, dentist, or psychologist. To ensure that I personally will read what you write me, become a paid Substack subscriber. That way you'll get to join my Discord, a $50 per month value. To help your family, community, or town with chronic illnesses or problems that practically didn't exist a century ago, or to learn how to help yourself, please contact me. The solutions to many modern problems that the authorities claim are insurmountable are just so easy. Subscribe and share this channel with everyone you know. I mean literally everyone, except maybe those you hate.